I often hear coaches during games or in training just yell at a player, be a leader, lead. And if you think about that ask, it's kind of just like if I told a player, hey, control the ball, and they have really no idea how to do it. What you typically see if you tell a player to lead is they maybe just start yelling louder, saying, let's go. But if you think about what true leadership is, that's not it. It's not the loudest person on the field, it's not necessarily the most intense person on the field. Leadership is a skill that is extremely difficult and it takes a lot of time to develop and learn. Just like every other skill of the game. If you're trying to work with a player on how to pass and receive, you're not just telling them to pass and receive. You have to go through a lot of iterations, a lot of training on how properly to do that. And most importantly, not just in one situation, but in any situation. And that's the tricky part of leadership. Leadership changes and what you need to do as a leader based on what is happening around you on the field. Leadership isn't always the one that's yelling on the field and being loud. It's knowing how to lead in different scenarios, when you need to speak, when you don't need to speak, when you need to pull people aside individually, when you need to talk to the group, when you need to let other people step up. There's so many elements and layers to leadership that it's incredibly unfair just to yell to a player, lead. Just like if somebody said that to you, what are you to do with that? If you're not trained in how to do those things, you're not really going to know what to do. And what you typically see is exactly that. A coach yells lead, and whichever player is given the armband for that day, they'll maybe yell a couple things and just kind of go back onto their whatever they were doing. And if you think about a true leader on the field, that means they're in control of everything in their environment and they're taking full responsibility for everything in their environment, which means their players, their teammates, what's happening in the game. And it's a ton of responsibility. And again, if you ask somebody to do that without them properly being trained, then you're really setting them up to fail. You're making an ask that is kind of beyond what they're capable of doing. And now there's players that, are more prone to lead, but sometimes that's just the kind of the more loudest personality or the more outgoing personality. And that's not always the best leader either. So when it comes to developing leadership, this should start in training just like anything else, putting the players in charge or certain players in charge in different elements in training, seeing how they take that, responsibility and managing the other players, setting up an activity, managing a before and after practice type of event, and then providing feedback on what worked and what didn't, and then having those discussions amongst your team. Leadership is not an ask. It's not an ask. It is a skill, and it's something that takes a very long time to learn and something you've never fully learned. Just like everything else in the game, you can always get better. So when we ask players on the field to be leaders, let's make sure we do that in a context that we've prepared them and maybe give them better instruction and help them learn how to lead versus just asking them to lead.